إنما تجزون ما كنتم تعملون. إن المتقين في جنات ونعيم فاكهين بما آتاهم ربهم ووقاهم ربهم عذاب الجحيم. كلوا واشربوا هنيئا بما كنتم تعملون متكئين على سرر مصفوفة وزوجناهم بحور عين. والذين آمنوا واتبعتهم ذريتهم بإيمان ألحقنا بهم ذريتهم وما ألتناهم من عملهم من شيء كل امرئ بما كسب رهين. كل امرئ بما كسب رهين. وأمددناهم بفاكهة ولحم مما يشتهون. يتنازعون فيها كأسا لا لغو فيها ولا تأثيم. ويطوف عليهم غلمان لهم كأنهم لؤلؤ مكنون. وأقبل بعضهم على بعض يتساءلون قالوا إنا كنا قبل في أهلنا مشفقين فمن الله علينا ووقانا عذاب السموم إنا كنا من قبل ندعوه إنه هو البر الرحيم. فذكر فما أنت بنعمة ربك بكاهن ولا مجنون. أم يقولون شاعر نتربص به ريب المنون قل تربصوا فإني معكم من المتربصين. أم تأمرهم أحلامهم بهذا أم هم قوم طاغون أم يقولون تقوله بل لا يؤمنون فليأتوا بحديث مثله إن كانوا صادقين. أم خلقوا من غير شيء أم هم الخالقون أم خلقوا السماوات والأرض بل لا يوقنون. أم لهم سلم يستمعون فيه أم لهم سلم يستمعون فيه فليأتي مستمعهم بسلطان مبين أم له البنات ولكم البنون أم تسألهم أجرا فهم من مغرم مثقلون أم عندهم الغيب فهم يكتبون أم يريدون كيدا فالذين كفروا هم المكيدون أم لهم إله غير الله سبحان الله عما يشركون وإن يروا كسفا من السماء ساقطا يقولوا سحاب مركوم صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you so much, Brother Anand. Inshallah, we're going to have Brother Wasi reading Hadith Kisa. Salawat.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Fatima al-Zahra, the daughter of the Prophet, peace be on them, is to have thus related an event. My father, the Prophet of Allah, came to my house one day and said to me, "Peace be on you, Fatima." I replied, "And upon you peace." Then he said, "I feel weakness in my body." I said, "May Allah protect you from weakness, father." He said, "Fatima, please bring the Yemeni cloak and cover me with it." So I brought the Yemeni cloak and covered him with it. Then I looked at him and saw that his face was shining like a full moon with its glory and splendor. Allahumma salli. After a while, my son Hossein came in and said, "Peace be on you, mother." I replied, and upon you be peace, O light of my eyes and the delight of my heart." He then said, "O mother, I smell a fragrance so sweet and so pure as that of my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah." I replied, "Yes, your grandfather is underneath the cloak." Hossein went near the cloak and said, "Peace be on you, my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you?" He replied, "And upon you be peace, my son and the master of my fountain. You are given the permission to enter." So Hossein entered the cloak with him. Allahumma salli ala. After a while, my Hossein came in and said, "Peace be on you, mother." I replied, "And upon you be peace, O light of my eyes and the delight of my heart." He then said, "O mother, I smell a fragrance so sweet and so pure as that of my grandfather, the Prophet of Allah." I replied, "Yes, your grandfather and your brother are underneath the cloak." Hossein stepped towards the cloak and said, "Peace be on you, my grandfather, the chosen of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you?" He replied, "And upon you be peace, my son, and interceder of my followers. You are given the permission to enter." So Hossein entered the cloak with them. Allahumma salli ala. After a while, Abu al-Hasan, Ali ibn Abi Talib, came in and said, "Peace be on you, O daughter of the Prophet of Allah." I replied, "And upon you be peace, O father of Hassan and the commander of the faithful." He then said, "O Fatima, I smell a fragrance so sweet and so pure as that of my brother and my cousin, the Prophet of Allah." I replied, "Yes, he is underneath the cloak with your two sons." So Ali went near the cloak and said, "Peace be on you, Prophet of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you?" He replied, and upon you be peace, my brother, my successor, and my standard bearer. You are given the permission to enter. So Ali entered the cloak with them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Then I stepped forward and said, peace be on you, my father, O Prophet of Allah. May I enter the cloak with you? He replied, and upon you be peace. My daughter, O part of myself, you are given the permission to enter. So I entered the cloak with them. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Getting together underneath the cloak, my father, the Prophet of Allah, held the two ends of the cloak and raised his right hand towards the heavens and prayed, O Allah, these are the people of my household. They are my confidants and my supporters. Their flesh is my flesh, and their blood is my blood. Whoever hurts them, hurts me too. Whoever displeases them, displeases me too. I'm at war with those who are at war with them. I'm at peace with those who are at peace with them. I'm the enemy of their enemies, and I'm the friend of their friends. They are from me, and I am from them. O Allah, bestow your blessings, benevolence, forgiveness, and your pleasure upon me and upon them, and keep them away from impurity and flaws, and keep them thoroughly purified. Then the Lord Almighty Allah said, O my angels, O residents of my heaven, verily I have not created the erected sky, the stretched earth, the illuminated moon, the bright sun, the rotating planets, the flowing seas, and the sailing ships, but for the love of these five underneath the cloak. Gabriel, the trusted angel, asked, who are under the cloak? The Almighty answered, they are the household of the Prophet and the assets of prophethood. They are Fatima, her father, her husband, and her two sons. Allahumma salli ala. Gabriel said, O Lord, may I fly to earth to be the sixth of them? Allah replied, yes, you are given the permission. Gabriel, the trusted, landed near the Prophet and said, peace be on you, O Prophet of Allah. The All-Highest conveys his peace on you and his greetings, and says, by my honor and glory, O my angels, O residents of my heavens, verily I have not created the erected sky, the stretched earth, the illuminated moon, the bright sun, the rotating planets, the flowing seas, and the sailing ships, but for your sake and love. And Allah has given me permission to enter the cloak with you. May I join you, O Prophet of Allah? The Prophet replied, and peace be on you, O trusted bearer of Allah's revelations. You are granted the permission. So Gabriel entered the cloak with us. Allah. Gabriel said to my father, Allah sends his revelations to you. Verily, Allah's desire to keep you away from impurities and flaws, O people of a household, and keep you thoroughly purified. Then Ali said to my father, O Prophet of Allah, tell me, what significance has Allah given for getting together underneath this cloak? The Prophet replied, by him who rightfully appointed me a prophet and chose me a messenger for the salvation of the mankind, whenever and wherever an assembly of our followers and friends mention this event, Allah will bestow on them his mercy and blessings. Angels will encircle them as asking Allah the remission of their sins until the assembly disperses. So Ali said, verily by the Lord of the Kaaba, we and our followers are the winners. Allahumma salli ala. Then my father replied, by him who rightfully appointed me a prophet and chose me a messenger for the salvation of the mankind, whenever and wherever an assembly of our followers and friends mention this event, there shall be none grieved, but Allah will remove his grief. There shall be none distressed, but Allah will dispel his stress. There shall remain none wish seeker, but Allah will grant his wish. Ali, peace be upon him, said, then we have won and attained pleasure. I swear it by Allah, so have our adherents. They have won and attained pleasure in this world and in the hereafter. I swear it by the Lord of the Kaaba. Allah.
Jazakallah khair jaza. Brother Wasi, thank you so much for that wonderful English translation of Hadith Kisa. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. From the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're very privileged to have amongst us this weekend Syed Hossein al-Qazwini. Very quickly before we welcome our respected scholar to the podium, I'd just like to give a very brief introduction. For over 10 years, the Syed has studied in the seminary of Karbala and Najaf. He has a number of publications on Islamic law, jurisprudence, and the science of biography. He completed his BA in Islamic Studies from the University of California in Berkeley. And he also leads the Salat of Maghrib and other Salats in the Haram of Imam al-Hossein alayhi salam. He leads the Salat al-Jama'ah in Karbala. And most importantly, he is a humble servant of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So without further ado, we kindly request our respected Syed to please take the podium. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله عليك يا رسول الله صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة ويا عبرة كل مؤمن ومؤمنا يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيمة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ما آتاكم الرسول فخذوه وما نهاكم عنه فانتهوا. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. We followers of Ahlul Bayt, we believe that the Holy Quran and the Holy Household are equally important, and they were left behind by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they are the two weighty things. And in the famous hadith, Hadith al-Thaqalain, Rasulullah says, "Inni tarikum fikumul thaqalain, kitab Allah wa itrati." I leave behind the two weighty things, the book of Allah and my household. Ma in tamassaktum bihima, if you hold on to both of them, lan tadillu ba'di abada. You will never be deviated. You'll never deviate. You'll never go astray. Hence, we take both seriously, the Holy Quran and the Hadith of Ahlul Bayt. The Hadith of Ahlul Bayt is just as important. And hence, the Imams, the Ahlul Bayt, they emphasized on preserving their Hadith, writing their Hadith, memorizing their Hadith, understanding their Hadith. We have narrations that tell us, أسرعوا إلى أولادكم بتعليم الحديث قبل أن يسبقكم إليهم المرجئة. That quickly teach your youth our Hadith Before the Murji'ah, they were a school of thought at the time of Imam al-Sadiq, a deviated, a splinter group. Before the Murji'ah, they get to your youth, teach them our hadith. That means hadith preserves our youth. Not just at that time, even till today. If we memorize the hadith of the Ahl Bayt, understand the hadith of Ahl Bayt, contemplate, the hadith of Ahl Bayt is light, nur. Hadithuhum nur, kalamukum nur. The hadith of Ahl Bayt is pure light. In one tradition, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, اعرفوا منازل الرجال بقدر روايتهم عنا. He says, know the value of men and women. Here, men doesn't literally mean men, but mu'mineen, know the value of mu'mineen according to what? What's the scale? How much hadith do they know? How much hadith have they preserved? How many hadith have we memorized? Have we understood? Do we understand and contemplate over? We have narrations that tell us never deny a hadith. Even if it seems weird to you, irrational, or illogical to you, don't say there's a problem with this hadith. First say, I cannot understand it. I cannot comprehend this hadith. It's above my pay grade. It's above my intellectual level. Maybe if I contemplate over it, if I think over it, perhaps this hadith will make sense. Just by reading a hadith quickly, and for example, there's karamat, there's fada'il, there's virtues to the Ahlul Bayt, for the Imams, and it doesn't make sense to us, it doesn't mean that this is a fabricated hadith. It could mean that I'm not understanding it. It's above my level. And hence, a hadith that is narrated by a reliable source should not be denied. We should not quickly rush and say, no, this is a fake hadith. This is a fabricated hadith. The Imam says, فَإِنَّهُ لَا عُذْرَ لَأَحَدٍ مِّن مَوَالِينَ في التشكيك فيما يؤديه عنا ثقاتنا. That if some of our reliable transmitters, some of our reliable companions, they tell you that Imam al-Baqir, Imam Sadiq, so and so Imam, he said this hadith, and you quickly reject, the Imam says you have no excuse. There's no justification. Don't deny a hadith right away because it doesn't suit you, or it doesn't suit your culture or customs. We have to be very careful. Unfortunately, there's a trend. If a hadith does not make sense to us immediately we eradicate that hadith. We brush that hadith off. No, maybe it doesn't make sense to you, but it'll make sense to others. It requires contemplation. It requires thinking. The Imam says, hadithuna sa'bun mustas'ab, that our hadith, not everyone can handle the hadith of the Imams. There were individuals during the lifetime of the Ahlul Bayt, they could not handle their hadith. And hence the Imams, not only did they practice taqiyya with others, sometimes they practiced taqiyya with their own companions. Why? Because they were not all on the same intellectual level. They were not all on the same ma'rifah level. Some had more ma'rifah than others. Those with low ma'rifah, the Imams had to practice taqiyya with. Because he might accuse the Imam of kufr, of disbelief. Why? Because the Imam says something and he cannot comprehend it. Our ulama went through a great deal of work and jihad in preserving hadith, and preserving the narrations of Ahlul Bayt. The Quran was preserved. The Quran, Allah protected it. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا الذِّكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. That we have revealed the Quran and we shall protect it. But for the hadith of Ahlul Bayt, the enemies of Ahlul Bayt worked tirelessly to destroy their ahadith. Our ulama made a great effort to preserve these ahadith, to compile them in compendiums, like Shaykh al-Kulayni in his al-Kafi. Al-Kafi should not be taken lightly. Of course, we don't claim that everything in al-Kafi is authentic and sahih. Unlike our Sunni brothers and sisters who believe that everything in Sahih al-Bukhari is sahih. In fact, Bukhari himself, when he wrote his book, he called it al-Jami' al-Sahih. He claims that everything in his book is sahih. Al-Kulayni doesn't. Al-Kulayni doesn't make such a claim. But he says that I worked for 20 years. It took al-Kulayni 20 years to compile al-Kafi. And he went from city to city, from village to village, to compile the narrations of Ahlul Bayt. He went knocking on doors. Do you have any hadith? Do you have any hadith? And he filtered out the traditions, and he gave us the pure traditions of Ahlul Bayt. So they went through a great deal of trouble. Shaykh al-Saduq, in his books like Man La Yahdharu al-Faqih, which is an excellent source on fiqh. In fact, Shaykh al-Saduq has a book on hadith called Madinatul Ilm, if I'm not mistaken. Madinatul Ilm. This book was lost. It's lost. Our ulama say that if this book had survived, we have some parts of it today. If we had the whole entire book today, we would have had 5 sources of hadith, not 4. 5. Al-Saduq would have had 2 books on hadith, Man La Yahdharu al-Faqih and this, Madinatul Ilm. But it was lost. It was lost. Although our ulama had major efforts in preserving the traditions of Ahlul Bayt, word for word. The companions of the Imams, they wouldn't simply paraphrase what the Imam said. No, they would tell us word for word how the Imam spoke, how he said it, how he paused. They would relate this to us. Why? Because this is the knowledge that the Imams wanted us to have. This light, this nur of Ahlul Bayt, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhim. So the early, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So the early scholars, they had their attempts, their efforts of preserving hadith. The later scholars, the 3 Muhammads and the later Muhammads. The first Muhammads, Muhammad al-Kulayni, Muhammad ibn Yaqub al-Kulayni, Muhammad ibn Ali ibn Babawayh al-Saduq, and Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Tusi. These 3 scholars, early scholars, al-Kulayni, al-Saduq, al-Tusi, they preserved our hadith. And then the later Muhammads, the 3 Muhammads, Muhammad al-Hurr, Muhammad ibn al-Hasan al-Hurr al-Amili, the author of Wasa'il al-Shi'a, Muhammad al-Fayd al-Kashani, the author of al-Safi or al-Wafi, and Muhammad Baqir al-Majlisi, the author of Bihar al-Anwar. So we always had scholars who preserved the traditions and ahadith of Ahlul Bayt. طيب. This was an introduction. Tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, we'd like to discuss something very important. And that is, we have several types of hadith. Hadith is the traditions and the sayings of the ma'soomeen, the infallibles, starting with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, up until the 12th Imam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The 14 ma'soomeen, all their sayings were collected. That is hadith. That is hadith. Now, hadith ranges on lots of topics, but we have 5 main categories of hadith. Number 1, aqa'id, theology. We have plenty of narrations on aqa'id. So, believing in God, believing in the prophets, believing in the Imams, believing in asma, in the Day of Judgment, heaven, hell, angels, things that we have to believe in, aqa'id. We have plenty of narrations on aqa'id. This is the first category. The second category is fiqh. We have traditions on fiqh. In fact, most of our traditions, most of our hadith are on fiqh. So for example, Al-Kafi is divided into 3 sections. You have Usul Al-Kafi, the first 2 volumes. Al-Kafi is 8 volumes. The first 2 volumes is Usul Al-Kafi, basically on aqa'id. And then starting from volume 3, it's Furu' Al-Kafi. Furu', it's Usul Al-Din and Furu' Al-Din. Furu' Al-Din is what? Fiqh, ibadat, praying, fasting, giving khums, giving zakat, going to hajj, marriage, divorce, business transactions. That's furu'. Most of our ahadith pertain to fiqh. So this is the second category. The first is aqa'id, the second is fiqh. Number 3, tafsir. We have a lot of traditions on tafsir, explaining to us the Holy Quran. From the Bismillah of Surah Al-Fatiha up until Surah An-Nas, the end of Surah An-Nas, in the final chapter of the Holy Quran. We have traditions of Ahlul Bayt that explain to us the Holy Quran. These traditions are known as the traditions on tafsir. Number 4, history. We have traditions on history. When was Rasulullah born? When did he die? When was Amir al-Mu'mineen born? When did he die? The deaths of the Ma'soomeen, the births of the Ma'soomeen. Who did they marry? Who were their children? How many boys? How many girls? The names of their spouses. What happened in their life? Where did they go? How did they live? Which battles did they have? This is history. We have plenty of narrations on tariq, on history. This is number 4. Number 5, akhlaq. We have traditions on akhlaq. How to behave, how a husband should treat his wife, how a wife should treat her husband, how a father should treat his children, how children should treat their father, and so on and so forth. This is known as akhlaqi traditions. Hence we have 5 categories of hadith: aqaid, fiqh, history, tafsir, and akhlaq. Now, the question is, when we accept these traditions, whether it's history, tafsir, fiqh, aqaid, or akhlaq, what methodology do we use? Do we use the same methodology for all 5 categories? Or no? Or each category has its own science, has its own methodology. So for example, traditions on tafsir are usually studied by whom? Mufassirun, scholars who specialize in tafsir. Usually it is they who study the traditions of tafsir that explain to us the traditions on the Quran, that explain the Holy Quran. Traditions on aqaid, ahadith on aqaid are usually studied by whom? Theologians, mutakallimun. Those who don't discuss fiqh, but rather what we should believe in. Not the things that we need to do. The things that we should believe in and accept as aqaid. History narrations are usually studied by whom? Historians. Not a faqih, not a mufassir, not a mutakallim, but rather historians. Fiqhi traditions are studied by whom? Jurists, mujtahidun, those who derive laws, those who perform ijtihad. They have to deal with the fiqhi traditions. Akhlaqi traditions, usually it's by khutaba, orators, speakers for majalis. In Muharram, in Ramadan, orators, they usually benefit from which category? Akhlaqi traditions, traditions on akhlaq. So the question is, do we use the same methodology for all 5 categories of hadith, or does every category has its own methodology? So as a historian, when I deal with a hadith, for example, that discusses the birthday of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, let me give you an example. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When was Rasulullah born? The majority of our ulama, they say he was born on the 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal, while we have traditions that say it's the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, and this is the opinion of Shaykh al-Kulayni in Al-Kafi. So which one's most authentic? Is it the 12th of Rabi' al-Awwal, or is it the 17th? As a historian, now here we're not passing judgment, is it the 12th or the 17th? Most of our ulama, they say 17th. But if I were a historian, what methodology should I use to decipher which hadith is authentic? This is a historian. What about a faqih, a jurist? Will he apply the same methodology that was used by the historian, or does he have another methodology? This is something very important that we discuss right from the start, right from the get-go. Why? Because if each field, if each category has its own methodology, would it be correct that I apply a historical method to fiqh? No, it wouldn't. Would it be wise that I apply a fiqhi method to history? No, it wouldn't. It would only be wise. It's just like the sciences and liberal arts. Here in the West, you either get a BS or a BA. You either study the liberal arts or the sciences. Imagine if someone majors in chemistry but wants to analyze what he studies in chemistry based on the humanities. Does this make sense? Of course it doesn't make sense. That's illogical. Why? Because the humanities and liberal arts, they have their own methodology. Chemistry, biology, physics has its own methodology. And it wouldn't be right to mix between the two. Let's come to aqa'id. And I want 3 salawats, please. Loud salawats. Let's come to aqa'id first. Again, what is aqa'id? Aqa'id comes from aqidah. What I have to believe in, what I have to accept as a mu'min, as a Muslim, as a believer. What is it that I have to believe in and accept? What will I be asked about by munkar and nakir in my grave? In the first night of my grave, I will be asked about my aqidah, my aqa'id. Where do I take my aqa'id from? I am now facing a lot of narrations, a lot of traditions, whether it's in Al-Kafi or Bihar al-Anwar. There's plenty of traditions on Tawheed, Adl, Nubuwa, Imama. طيب, Alam al-Dhar, which is life before Alam al-Dunya, Alam al-Dhar. And then there's Alam al-Barzakh, which is in between Alam al-Dunya and Alam al-Akhirah. And there's traditions on Alam al-Akhirah, traditions on angels, heaven, hell, the throne of Allah, the qalam, al-lawh, al-arsh, these things. What's my methodology in aqa'id? What are the traditions that I accept? Which ones are the ones that I reject? First off, we have the 5 usul al-din. What are the 5 usul al-din? Tawheed, Nubuwa, Tawheed, Adl, Nubuwa, Imama, Ma'ad. These 5 usul al-din, they have to be based on ilm. They have to be based on yaqeen, on certainty, not based on isolated reports. What do I mean by isolated reports? Khabar wahid. You pick up, for example, Al-Kafi or any other book on hadith. You read 1 hadith, 2, 3, and you say, khalas, I picked up my aqa'id. That's not enough. In aqa'id, you need certainty. And how do you receive certainty? Through multiple reports. Let me give you an example. Right now, someone might come in and say, it's raining outside. Do you believe him or you don't believe him? 50-50. If there's 2 people that tell you it's raining, do you believe them? There's a good chance that they're telling the truth. But if 10 individuals come and tell you that it's raining, here it's not that you're going to believe them. You're going to have knowledge of rain. Here you're going to be certain that it's raining. Why? Because it's 10 different individuals who did not conspire with each other. That 10 random people. Just like today I was chosen for random search, subhanAllah. I was leaving from Detroit airport. No, not that type of random. Real random. When 10 random people, they come and tell me, it's raining outside. I'll be like, yes, then I have ilm. I have knowledge, because these 10 people did not conspire and come and tell me. It must be raining. In aqa'id, we need numerous reports. 10, more, less. Anything that gives ilm. In yaqeen, regarding what? The 5 usul ad-din. Other than the 5 usul ad-din, isolated reports are enough. So for example, angels. Do angels exist? Do angels not exist? If I have 1 or 2 traditions that tell me angels exist, that's enough. I do not have to have ilm and yaqeen in anything other than the 5 usul al-din. Alam al-dhar, life before dunya, or alam al-barzakh, life after dunya but before alam al-akhirah. What happened over there before we came here? What will happen to me, life after death but before akhirah, before the day of judgment? What's going to happen? We have plenty of traditions. We have, for example, traditions that the souls of the mu'mineen, any mu'min, when he passes away, in any part of the dunya, his soul goes to where? Wadi Salam, next to Amir al-Mu'mineen Salamullahi alayhi, over there. While the souls of the munafiqeen and the kuffar, they go to a valley, where? In Yemen. Why Yemen? I don't know. But we have traditions like this. Can we accept such traditions? Do they have to give me yaqeen and ilm? No. If there's a couple of reports, isolated reports, that is certainly enough. And the best books, the best sources for aqa'id, number one, Usul al-Kafi. Number one, definitely, hands down, Usul al-Kafi by Shaykh al-Kulayni. In fact, it's not only the best source on aqa'id, it's the best source on fiqh as well. Usul al-Kafi is our best book after Al-Quran, Al-Quran al-Kareem. The best book after when it comes to traditions and authentic. Of course, Nahj al-Balagha is up there as well. Nahj al-Balagha is up there. But perhaps al-Kafi takes precedence before Nahj al-Balagha. Usul al-Kafi is an excellent source on aqa'id. At-Tawheed by Shaykh al-Saduq is an excellent source on aqa'id. Al-I'tiqadat by Shaykh al-Saduq is an excellent source. His student, Al-Mufid, has a book called Tasheeh al-I'tiqadat. That's an excellent source on aqa'id. Of course, these books are in Arabic, and that we hope, inshallah, that the younger generation will learn Arabic and will translate all of these sources into English. Let's come to fiqh. What is our methodology in fiqh? Now we left aqa'id, we come to fiqh. As a jurist, as a mujtahid, you face plenty of narrations, plenty of traditions. And al-Kafi, man la yahdhuru al-faqih, at-tahdhib, istibsar. These are the four main sources of hadith. And there's plenty of other sources. As a jurist, which sources do you rely on? Which sources do you not? Which traditions do you rely on? Which traditions do you not? Our former scholars, my dear brothers and sisters, our former scholars like al-Murtada, Syed al-Murtada, the brother of al-Sharif al-Radi, who compiled the sermons and traditions of Amir al-Mu'mineen and Nahj al-Balagha. Sharif al-Radi was known in aqa'id and known for being very eloquent. As-Sayyid al-Murtada was a jurist. Two brothers, excellent. Both excelled academically. But As-Sayyid al-Murtada was a mujtahid, and he was the top mujtahid of his time, the top marja' of his time. Sayyid al-Murtada, he required for a tradition to have authority in fiqh, it had to be numerous, mutawatir. So again, one tradition would not be enough. 2, 3 is not enough. He would need at least 10. But for later scholars, after that period, no, today our scholars say one tradition is enough. One hadith is enough. But it has to have an authentic chain of narrators. Sahih al-sanad. The sanad has to be perfect. Don't bring me a hadith with a shady sanad. There are individuals that I don't know. No, we have to know who the narrators are. They have to be reliable. Our ulama of rijal, they have to check them out. They tell us that they are reliable. Then I will take the hadith. And not only that, I will issue a fatwa based on that hadith. The day that you find a hadith that has a credible chain of narrators, all it takes is one hadith, as long as it does not conflict with the Holy Quran, as I will mention in a couple of minutes. We will take that hadith. And it has a reliable source. So it's found in Al-Kafi, Tahdhib, Istibsar, man la yahdhuru al-faqih, the 4 important sources of hadith. That's good enough. But if it does not have a strong chain of narrators, it will not be accepted. Let me give you an example. Today, my dear friends, there's a controversy amongst some scholars that the third shahada, the third testimony, meaning the testimony to Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam. Of course, we recite it in adhan and we recite it in iqamah. But what about in salah? Should it be recited in salah? Today, there's a couple of ulama, of course not the mainstream. For example, as Sayyid Sistani says, if you mention the third testimony in salah, your salah is batil. It's invalid. We have to take salah as is mentioned by the Ahlul Bayt. But there are some scholars today, a few, maybe a handful, that say that their testimony is wajib in salah. In salah. طيب, what's your proof and evidence? They mention a couple of narrations, and I've seen those narrations. But the problem with those narrations is that they all have what? A weak chain of narrators. And they have weak chain of narrators. The isnad is inauthentic, is unauthentic. It doesn't have a strong chain of narrators, and hence a mujtahid cannot issue a fatwa. A mujtahid will say that, sure, bring me an authentic chain of narrators, I'll issue a fatwa right now. But if you bring me a weak tradition with a weak hadith, I cannot issue that fatwa. The best sources on fiqh, my dear brothers and sisters, are the 4 books that we just mentioned. Al-Kafi, Man la yahdhuru al-faqih, At-Tahdhib, Al-Istibsar. We come to tafsir. What is the methodology, the correct methodology to be used on the traditions of tafsir? For example, I look up any verse in the Holy Quran, and I want to understand what is Allah Azza wa Jal saying in this verse. It's not clear to me. So I need the help of whom? The Ahlul Bayt. I need the assistance of the Imams to explain to me what Allah means by this verse. We have plenty of traditions, but do we accept all of them? Do we reject all of them? Is there a specific methodology? Yes, the methodology is also simple. We may accept isolated reports, meaning 1, 2, 3 traditions, that's enough. It doesn't have to be multiple reports. It doesn't have to be mutawatir. And as long as the chain of narrators is authentic. However, many of the traditions on tafsir, we assume it's tafsir. It's actually not tafsir. It's something else called ta'wil. There's tafsir and there's ta'wil. What's the difference between tafsir and ta'wil? Tafsir, my dear friends, is explaining the apparent meaning of the verse. The verse has an apparent meaning, but sometimes we get confused. The Imam helps us understand the apparent meaning of the verse. For example, in Surah Abasa wa Tawalla, the verse says, وَفَاكِهَةً وَأَبَّا. وَأَبَّا. What does the word abba? Fakiha means fruits. What is abba? The second Khalifa was asked. A woman came to him. She told him, what does abba mean? He said, I don't know. I don't know. So she answered. The following verse answers, مَتَاعًا لَكُمْ وَلِي أَنْعَامِكُمْ. Food for you and food for your animals. Abba is food for animals. And hence, Umar said his famous quote, كُلُّ النَّاسِ أَفْقَهُ مِنْكَ يَا عُمَرْ حَتَّى النِّسَاء. And the saying of his is very misogynistic. He says, everyone is more knowledgeable than you, O Umar, including women. It's as if women don't have knowledge. Including women. There are some women that are scholars. Some women understand regarding hadith and Quran more than men. طيب. This is tafsir. Tafsir is the apparent meaning of the verse. Ta'wil, no, ta'wil is different. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ. Allah says that only I know the ta'wil of the Quran. Not only I, but those who have deep knowledge. Meaning whom? Ahlul Bayt Salamullah alayhim. What is ta'wil? Ta'wil is the hidden meaning behind the verse. That which you cannot read. It's what's in between the lines of the verse. It's the hidden meaning, the secret meaning, the deeper meaning to the verse. That is ta'wil. Or it's examples of the verse. For example, we have a verse that says, وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا قَرْيَةً كَانَتْ آمِنَةً مُطْمَئِنَّةً يَأْتِيهَا رِزْقُهَا رَغَدًا مِنْ كُلِّ مَكَانٍ فَكَفَرَتْ بِأَنْعُمِ اللَّهِ. Allah says that Allah gives an example of a village that was harmonious. Its citizens lived in peace and harmony, and its rizq would come from all directions until it was ungrateful. Until it was ingrateful, so Allah let that village taste some poverty. فَأَذَاقَهَا اللَّهُ لِبَاسَ الْجُوعِ وَالْخَوْفِ. Allah let that village taste a bit of poverty, hunger, and fear. Which village? Some hadith say this is Mecca, for example. Well, this is an example. This is an example. Ta'wil sometimes is simply an example. But this notion of a village that is ungrateful, it could be any city, inshallah not DC. At least not this weekend, inshallah, while I'm here. No, inshallah, may it always be safe. And may the mu'mineen always be safe, inshallah. So this is an example. The best sources on tafsir, my dear brothers, the narrations on tafsir. The best source on the traditions of Ahlul Bayt on tafsir, Tafsir al-Qummi, Ali ibn Ibrahim. This is the oldest tafsir riwa'i that contains the traditions of Ahlul Bayt. This is one. Tafsir al-Safi by Al-Fidh al-Kashani. Tafsir Nur al-Thaqalain. Tafsir al-Ayyashi. Tafsir al-Burhan. These are tafasir, books of tafsir that are based on the traditions of Ahlul Bayt. If you want to see what the Imam has said on these verses, refer to these sources. طيب. Number 4, history. We have traditions on history. As I mentioned, when was the Prophet born? When did he die? How many children did he have? Who were his wives? How many daughters does he have? For example, inshallah, this year during the Shahada of Rasulullah, I have a lecture. Unfortunately, it won't be here in New Jersey. Was Rasulullah murdered? This is history. This is history. We have traditions that say Rasulullah was murdered. These traditions, are they reliable or not reliable? Amongst history traditions, who were the daughters of Rasulullah? For example, Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam, was she the only daughter of Rasulullah, or did Rasulullah have other daughters like Zainab and Kulthum and Ruqayyah? Who were these 3 ladies? Zainab, Kulthum and Ruqayyah. Were they his daughters? Were they the daughters of Sayyidah Khadija? Or were they daughters of the sister of Sayyidah Khadija? She was their aunt. Here there's different traditions, different ahadith. These ahadith pertain to history. So what's the methodology? Which ones can we rely on? Which ones can we not rely on? Again, here we take the ahadith that come from credible sources. When it comes to history, we cannot rely on dubious sources. A source that came up recently. No, it has to be a credible source, an old source, a source that checks out with the ulama, not something contemporary. Something contemporary, someone written 20 years ago that claims, for example, these 3 ladies were the daughters of Sayyidah Khadija from a previous marriage. I'm not going to take this. Why? Because this book is dubious. Where was it? Where was its history? How come previous ulama did not know about this book? How come it came out 20 years ago? You see, in history, you have to act as a historian. You have to see the source. Is it a credible source or not a credible source? Is the chain of narrators, is it authentic? Is it not authentic? Yes. Here, some ulama, they say that when it comes to history traditions, we can accept some weak traditions. What do I mean by weak? The sanad is weak as long as there are numerous reports. If there are numerous reports, even if the sanad doesn't check out, the isnad doesn't check out, but we have plenty of narrations. For example, we have plenty of narrations that say the birthday of Rasulullah was on the 17th of Rabi' al-Awwal. Maybe some of these traditions have a weak isnad. Maybe, I'm saying this as an example. But because they are numerous, we are allowed to accept these traditions. Now we come to akhlaq. Traditions on akhlaq. Meaning it's not fiqh, it's not halal and haram, it's not history, it's not aqa'id, it's not tafsir, it's akhlaq. For example, it is recommended that when you come to a majlis, you say assalamu alaikum, for example. Or you eat salt before a meal, before lunch, before dinner, you start with salt and you end with salt. For example, it is mustahab to cut your fingernails on Friday. This is adab, this is akhlaq. For example, the du'as of every day, the du'a of Tuesday, the du'a of Wednesday, the du'a of Thursday, these are mustahabbat and akhlaq. This is not halal and haram, correct? So what's the methodology used with such type of traditions. Here, do we need to have a credible chain of narrators or not? Here our ulama are split in two. Previously, our ulama said that when it comes to mustahabbat, makruhat, akhlaq and adab, you do not need an authentic chain of narrators. Any hadith. For example, there's a hadith that says on the eve of every month, pay sadaqah. Do it, even if it doesn't have a strong chain of narrators. For example, there's a hadith that says on Thursday nights, perform this sort of a'mal, or read this dua. Even if it doesn't have a strong chain of narrators, do it. This is one opinion. Another opinion says no. Even with mustahabbat, makruhat, akhlaq, adab, even if it's not halal or haram, you still need an authentic chain of narrators. And amongst those ulama, Syed Sistani, hafidhahullah. Syed Sistani, his methodology in fiqh is that you require, a faqih requires an authentic chain of narrators, even when it comes to mustahabbat and makruhat. Let me give you an example. Ghusl. Does ghusl suffice for wudu or not? Here there's a split. There's a split between ulama. Some ulama say that ghusl al-janaba gives you wudu. You don't need to perform wudu. And ghusl al-jum'ah. There are some ulama that don't even accept ghusl al-jum'ah. Ghusl al-jum'ah is mustahab. But does it give you wudu? Or do you still need to perform wudu? They say no, you still have to perform wudu. Syed Sistani, his fatwa says that any ghusl, any mustahab ghusl that has an authentic chain of narrators. So we have an authentic chain of narrators from the imam telling us, for example, to perform ghusl on Friday, that ghusl does not need wudu. But if the ghusl has a weak chain of narrators, you need to perform wudu. You see? So even with mustahabbat, makruhat, adab, some ulama say you still need an authentic chain of narrators. After all of this, we come up with this result that we cannot mix between methodologies. You could be a historian, you could be a jurist. You could be a mutakallim, scholar of theology. You could be a mufassir, scholar of tafsir. You cannot mix between the methodologies. You have to see what is your field, what is your area of concentration, what type of ahadith are you dealing with, and then you apply that methodology. So as a historian, you cannot apply a fiqh methodology. As a faqih, you cannot apply a history methodology. For example, in fiqh, a hadith may not conflict with the Holy Quran. This is a must. We have a hadith, Mu'tabarat as-Sukuni. Rasulullah says, إِنَّ عَلَى كُلِّ حَقٍّ حَقِيقَةً وَعَلَى كُلِّ صَوَابٍ نُورًا, that every truth has a sign, and every truth has light to it. You can tell if this is truth or it's falsehood. فَمَا وَافَقَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا خَالَفَ كِتَابَ اللَّهِ فَدَعُوهُ. Any hadith that is compatible with the Holy Book, act upon it, take it, issue a fatwa based on it. But if it conflicts with the Holy Quran, reject it. This is part of a fiqh tradition. This is a methodology in fiqh. Do we apply the same methodology in history? No. Do we apply the same methodology in akhlaq? No. We only apply it in fiqh. Another question as we approach the end of our lecture. Can we rely our Sunni brothers and sisters, we have respect for them, and we respect their intellectual traditions and what they we respect their intellectual history and their intellectual output. But can we rely on Sunni books of tarikh and history? Obviously in fiqh we cannot. Obviously in aqa'id we cannot. Obviously in tafsir we cannot. In fiqh, we rely on our own books. In aqa'id, we rely on our own books. In tafsir, we rely on our own books. What about history? Can we rely on their books? For example, Tarikh ibn Hisham. Tarikh ibn Hisham is a famous Sunni book of history. Can we rely on it? Tafsir ibn Ishaq. This is a very old Sunni book of history. Can we rely on it? Tarikh al-Tabari. This is a well-known book of history by our Sunni brothers and sisters. Can we rely on it or not? So for example, let me give you an example to see. We have, not in our books of history, in their books of history, they mention narrations that Imam Ali, for example, named his son Uthman, or he named his son Abu Bakr, or he named his son Umar, or that Imam al-Qazwini alayhi salam, he named one of his daughters Aisha. In their books, not in ours. And if we have some ulama, for example, Al-Sheikh al-Mufid and Al-Irshad, who mentions that Al-Imam al-Qazwini named his daughter Aisha, he relied on a Sunni history book, not in our traditions. So you won't find a hadith in Al-Kafi that says Imam al-Qazwini named his daughter Aisha. Nor will you find a hadith in Al-Kafi that Imam Ali named his son Umar. But you'll find this in Sunni history books. Can we rely on their books or not? Yes and no. What do I mean by this? So another example, Sayyidah Sukaina salamullah alayha, the daughter of Imam Hossein. Some Sunni books of history mention that Sayyidah Sukaina married and remarried 6 times. 6 times. It's in their books. Of course, this is not in our books. And unfortunately, in some of their books, they mention that Sayyidah Sukaina would sit in a public gathering where there were poets and maybe even music being played. How do you expect me to rely on a source like this? That insults the daughter of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Or in their history books, they mention that Sayyidah Khadija was not a virgin, rather she was divorced when Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa married her. And on the opposite side, Aisha was married at the age of 8, and not even 9, 8. Can I rely on such traditions? Can I rely on such history books or not? Again, yes and no. No, when it obviously there is a conflict of interest. When there's a conflict of interest, I'm not going to accept. When you tell me that Aisha got married at the age of 9 and Khadija got married at the age of 40, there's a conflict of interest here. Why? Because you're making Khadija look old and you're making Aisha look young. There's a conflict of interest. Especially, by the way, those who ask, is it true that Rasulullah married Aisha at the age of 9? Do you know who's the narrator? Who's the narrator that narrates that? Aisha herself. Aisha herself. And it's obvious why. Because she wants to make herself look younger in comparison to the other wives of Rasulullah. And they have traditions that Khadija was 40 years old, while our ahadith and our ulama say she was not 40, she was 28. And she was a virgin. She was not a widow and she was not divorced. So if there's a conflict of interest, obviously we cannot rely on that hadith. Here we have to analyze. We have to assess. I can't tell you reject all of their traditions on history, nor will I tell you accept all of their traditions on history. I tell you analyze, think, ponder, assess, take that hadith, see, is it problematic, is it not problematic? Does it conform to our teachings? Is there a conflict of interest? If there's a conflict of interest, I'll leave that hadith aside. If there's no conflict of interest, I'll take it. I'll take it. For example, al-Tabari might narrate a sermon by Imam Hussein alayhi salam in Mecca, and the same sermon is in our books. I'll take it. There's no problem with taking it, because it does not affect the dignity of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. You see? Lastly, traditions on Ashura and traditions on Imam Hussein. Riwayat on Karbala and Imam Hussein. In which category do they fall? Fiqh? No, they're not fiqh. Aqa'id? No, it's not a matter of aqa'id. Tafsir? It's not tafsir. Akhlaq? It's a matter of history. And hence it's important to use that methodology. You see, my dear friends, when we come to the traditions of Ashura and Imam Hussein, we apply a historical methodology and understanding the traditions of Karbala. And we rely on credible sources when it comes to Karbala. We have credible sources. For example, Al-Luhuf ila Qatl al-Tufuf by Syed ibn Tawus. This is a credible source. Maqtal Abi Mikhnif. This is one of the oldest maqatil. One of the oldest maqatil is Maqtal Abi Mikhnif. Unfortunately, it is not complete. All of it is not complete. And it might contain things that we are not used to. For example, Maqtal Abi Mikhnif, he mentions a few details that we've read otherwise. But nevertheless, it's one of the oldest sources on Karbala. Kamil al-Ziyarat by Ibn Qawlaway. This is one of the best sources. And it contains authentic traditions of Ahlul Bayt on the day of Ashura. There are some, unfortunately, they leave excellent sources on Ashura and they rely on dreams. For example, this alim had this dream, or that alim had that dream. No, we don't need to rely on dreams. When it comes to, we have authentic traditions. We have excellent traditions. We have excellent sources on Ashura. Imam Hussein's musibah, my dear friends, doesn't need to be exaggerated that this alim had this dream or that. The tragedy is a major tragedy in itself. In itself. It doesn't need to be exaggerated by, no. The tragedy in itself is incredible. We have one of the ulama, he came to the Husseiniya, he got on the minbar and he said one statement. And then he got down and he left. Just one statement. When they asked him, why did you we asked you to recite al-Musibah, but you said one line and you came down. He said, if you think of this line, you cannot sleep at night. They told him, Shaykhina, what is it? He got up on the minbar, he sat, and he said, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Dakhalat Zainab ala ibn Ziyad. Zainab entered upon Ibn Ziyad. This is a tragedy. This is a tragedy. Zainab that no one saw, no one would see during the day. She entered upon Ibn Ziyad. Now Ibn Ziyad can see her. She stands in his court. This is a tragedy. If we were to read the traditions of Ahlul Bayt on Ashura, these historical traditions in these sources, this is a tragedy of its own. This is a tragedy of its own. Ibn Ziyad, la'natullahi alayh, he tells Sayyidah Zainab, كيف رأيتي صنع الله بك وبأخيك. Zainab, how did you find what Allah did to you? What Allah did to your brother? She said, ما رأيت إلا جميلة. I saw nothing but beauty. These are a group of people whom Allah has destined martyrdom, for them to have martyrdom and for us to be taken as captives. This was nothing but beauty because it comes from Allah Azza wa Jal. And then he says, لَقَدْ شَفَى اللَّهُ قَلْبِي بِقَتْلِ أَخِيكِ. Allah has made me happy to see your brother massacred. Do you see all of you massacred? لَقَدْ شَفَى اللَّهُ قَتْلِي. Zainab alayhi salam tells him that what you have said has broken my heart. Do you know who you have killed? Do you know who you have martyred? The best individuals on this planet. Imam Hossein alayhi salam and his brothers. Today, my dear friends, as we approach the end of Muharram and as we approach the holy month of Safar, the caravan of Imam Hussein alayhi salam is entering into Ash-Sham. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam was asked, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what was the greatest tragedy upon you? Was it Abdullah al-Radi'? He said, no, that was a great tragedy, but it wasn't that. Was it Abil Fadl al-Abbas? He says, no. Was it your father, Imam Hussein? No. They told him, Ya ibn Rasulullah, what was the greatest tragedy on the heart of Ahlul Bayt? He said, Ash-Sham. Entering into Damascus. Do you know how we entered into Damascus? We entered Damascus when everyone was parading. They were rejoicing. They were playing music. They were passing out sweets. When Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam enters Ash-Sham along with his aunt Zainab and his sisters and his aunt, Sahl ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi comes. he comes to Sham and he asks that where are these Khawarij? Because he didn't say Ahlul Bayt. Where are the Khawarij entering from? They told him Bab al-Sa'at, the gate of the hour. So he went, and everyone, the people of Sham, old, young, children, newborns, they had all gathered to rejoice the arrival of Imam Zain al-Abidin and Sayyidah Zainab into Sham. He says all of a sudden they started coming in. People were laughing, people were rejoicing, people were playing music. I came to Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. I told him, Sayyidi ibn Rasulullah, Ana Sahl ibn Sa'd al-Sa'idi. أنا ممن رأى جدك رسول الله. I am from the ones who met your grandfather Rasulullah. I'm a Sahabi. Is there anything that I could do for you? Sahl Imam Zain al-Abidin tells him, Ya Sahl, do you have a piece of cloth? Sahl ibn Sa'ad takes out his turban. He rips a cloth apart. He says, here my master, what would you like me to do with it? Imam Zain al-Abidin was in chains. Imam Zain al-Abidin had a chain around his neck. He said, lift the chain from my neck and put the cloth. It is hurting me. Sa'ad said, as soon as I lifted the chain, blood started gushing out from the neck of Imam Zain al-Abidin. I put the cloth underneath the chain. I said, my master, do you have any other orders for me? He said, yes, look at the woman and look at the heads put on a spear. The woman, they were being paraded in Sham, and the heads were on a spear in the middle of the woman. They had the heads in the middle of the woman so that people would gaze at the woman and not the heads. Imam Zain al-Abidin said, Ya Sahl, do you have any money? I said, Ya ibn Rasulullah, of course. He said, go to the soldiers who are carrying the head of my father, Imam Hossein. Tell him to come outside of the circle of women so that the people of Sham would look at the head of my father and not my aunt Zainab. لَقَدْ خُزِينَا مِنْ كَثْرَةِ النَّظَرِ إِلَيْنَا. We have been embarrassed from people's gazes onto my aunts and to my sisters. This was Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العلي الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا خوفا إلا آمنته، ولا رزقا إلا بسطته، ولا شملا إلا جمعته، ولا مرضا إلا شفيته، ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته، ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. We have been asked to kindly recite Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Al-Ikhlas 3 times for the deceased members of Asiya Ibad and Naveed Ibad's family, as well as the recent departures of Kamran Ibad and Narjis Ibad. Al-Fatiha ma'a salawat.
Hossein, 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 Hossein,
Hussein, 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 Hussein.
बेटा मैं एक दूसरा नोहा पढ़ना है, सोलो ही पढ़ो. Momineen, please fall yourselves in lines, inshallah. There's a new noha I want to share with you, which is titled Baina Silla wa Zilla, Hayhat Minna Dilla, which are the famous words of Imam Hussein, that I was put between the sword and humiliation, and we are far from humiliation. Hussein, 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 Hussein. No be'at to your emperor, O Shimran ibn Saad. We are the people of Sharaf. Tell this to Ibn Ziyad. Our faith is our izzah. Your evil is your dhillah. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Our faith is our izzah. Your evil is your dhillah. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Our honor we remember. We shall never surrender. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Everyone, هيهات من الذلة. Said Muslim ibn Awsija, 'tis my will, O Habib, do not leave al-Hussein alone until you are shaheed. He is Hujjah of Allah. He is the son of Zahra. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. We are the righteous nation, no to humiliation. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Everyone, هيهات من الذلة. He is Shabih Mustafa. Oh Ummah, can you see? He is Zabih Karbala. He is my son Ali. There is no one more worthy. تقدم يا ولدي. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. Allah is our selector. Allah is our avenger. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة هيهات من. Said Ghazi to the army of inhuman ashqiya, stop me, O cowards, if you can, from reaching al-Qama. I am the son of Haydar, who won Khandaq and Khaybar. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. My faith is like a mountain, and Kauthar is my fountain. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من. ذرا मातम को उठाएं थोड़ा सा. هيهات من الذلة هيهات من. The Ashqiya paraded us from Kufa unto Sham. Baba, they put a shackle on my brother and Imam. My ears, they are still bleeding, but my lips are repeating. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة. For I am your Sakina, riding in your Safina. بين السلة والذلة هيهات من الذلة هيهات. Zainab, in voice of Ali, said, listen, O Yazid, this message of Husainiyat you can never defeat. Allah is our guarantor, but you shall have no shelter. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat min dhilla. My brother did his duty, and all I saw was beauty. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat min dhilla, hayhat min. Remembering your martyrdom, your pain and imtihan, we nurture our readiness for Akhirul Zaman. We are your loyal Shia, Mahdi is our Mawla. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat min dhilla. This honor we remember, we shall never surrender. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat min dhilla, hayhat min dhilla. The Ashqiya paraded us from Kufa unto Sham. Baba, they put a shackle on my brother and Imam. My ears, they are still bleeding, but my lips are repeating. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat min dhilla. For I am your Ruqayya, riding in your safina. Bayna silla wa dhilla, hayhat min dhilla, hayhat min dhilla, hayhat min dhilla. Ya Hossein, Ya Hossein,
Ya Hossein, Ya Hossein, Ya Hossein, Ya Hossein, Ya Hossein. Inna Allah ma sabirin, 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 Inna Allah ma sabirin. My father was dying of thirst by the side of the river. People wouldn't give us water, though we had children with us. Oh, people, give us water. We are the Prophet's household. Haqqali, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin. Who will look after us now that we have lost Abbas and Akbar and Qasim, who were the light of our house? How can we not remember how Oscar has been slaughtered? Haqqali, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin. Sajjad is all alone now, no one is there to help him. He preached his words to people. I am the Prophet's grandson. People, don't hit me with stones. Don't you know I've no helpers? Haqqali, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin. Don't hurt us anymore now. Don't take us to the bazaar. Don't put the Prophet's household in such a poor condition. Don't you know that the ayat that here is all about us. Haqqali, inna Allah ma sabirin, inna Allah ma sabirin, inna Allah ma sabirin, inna Allah ma sabirin, inna Allah ma sabirin. Haqqali, Hussein ya Hussein, Hussein is the king, Hussein is the prince, Hussein of Karbala. Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin. Haqqali, Hussein, Ya Hussein, Hussein is the king, Hussein is the prince, Hussein of Karbala. Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. Inna Allah ma sabirin, Inna Allah ma sabirin. Hussein, Hussein,
Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein, Hussein. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا سائر الشهداء كربلاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء، السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء، السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس، السلام عليك يا أنيس النفوس، السلام عليك يا مدفون بأرض طوس، راضي بالقدر والقضاء علي بن موسى الرضا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولاي يا صاحب العصر والزمان، الأمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا قبة الإيمان وإمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان، عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. All the young ones, please come and give salams to our respected alim. Inshallah, tomorrow we will have the majlis at 7 o'clock. Please kindly be on time. Inshallah, we'll start on time.